How does a modern high-end smartphone compare to an old entry-level DSLR camera? To find that out, I will be comparing the iPhone 17 Pro to the Nikon D5000, which is a 16-year-old camera. First, I will show you a little slideshow with photos from both cameras so you can guess whether it was shot on the Nikon or on the iPhone. I think sometimes it is actually pretty difficult to tell apart both cameras, so I went into the forest and captured a side-by-side comparison. Now I want to share my experience using both cameras. Both photos were taken at approximately 200mm, and you can see that the Nikon has a much more creamy bokeh, and that is even more so at 300mm. You can also see that Nikon has much more details. Here's an example of the better flexibility of the iPhone, where you can quickly change between lenses, while on the Nikon you would have to take more with you. Here it gets visible that you can get a much creamier bokeh with the Nikon than with the iPhone. Here you can see that the iPhone isn't properly focused because it is very difficult to focus on small objects with the iPhone. The same problem I had on this screen recording, where the iPhone wouldn't focus on the branch. So what I did was I switched to the Lightroom mobile app and used the ultra wide lens and manual focus to focus properly. But apart from that, the iPhone's autofocus is fast and reliable. The Nikon's autofocus is also not very good, especially when using in live view, because then it often won't focus at all. But when used through the viewfinder it works, although it's still not as fast as the iPhone's, except for small objects where it's better. A note to dynamic range. If you expose the Nikon for the shadows, you can't properly recover the highlights, as you can see. Although if you expose it for the highlights, you can recover the shadows pretty well, although you have a little bit a loss of detail. The iPhone's dynamic range is much better, especially when used in Pro RAW. Although if used in normal RAW, it's more similar to the Nikon's. I just mentioned Pro RAW, which is Apple's own RAW format and includes some post-processing like noise reduction. If you compare to the Nikon's RAW file, you can see that the iPhone has slightly more detail, although the difference is not that big if you consider that it has 48 megapixels compared to the Nikon's 12. The iPhone also has no noise because of the noise reduction. Here you can see a photo of the iPhone shot in normal RAW. I know you can see that it also gets a little bit of noise, although apart from that looks similar. If seen side by side to the Pro RAW file, it gets visible that it has a little bit less details. Here's again a sharpness comparison between the iPhone's Pro RAW file and the Nikon's RAW file. And you can see that the iPhone has a little bit more details compared to the Nikon, although it also revealed that the Pro RAW file is slightly sharpened. A note to low light performance. Here you can see a photo of the iPhone and the Nikon shot at ISO 3200, with the iPhone in normal RAW. We can see that the Nikon's photo has more detail than the iPhone's. That gets even clearer at ISO 6400, where the iPhone already has some very bad color noise in the corners. But that was with the iPhone's main lens, which is the best for low light, because when the ultra-wide lens or the tele lens is used, the low light performance gets even worse. For better low light performance, you could use the iPhone standard camera app with night mode and Pro RAW, which delivers cleaner and sharper results, as you can see. But the Nikon has another advantage, because you could use a lens with a wider open aperture like f1.8 that lets in more light, and so you could lower your ISO, which would improve the image quality even further. And now my conclusion. The iPhone is best for architecture photos, landscape photos and street photography, although it also works with the Nikon, although maybe a little bit better with the iPhone because it has more details. But if you want to shoot wildlife or take macro photos, the Nikon is much better because it has more range with the telephoto lens. This is for example the best bird photo I took with the iPhone, although I think from a height it would maybe look a little bit better. But here you can see a photo that I took from the same distance with both cameras, and you can see that the Nikon's photo looks much better and is much sharper. And here are pros and cons from both cameras summarized in a table.